Late Nights with Ian Collins on LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. Let's get back on the phones with you. Insulting religion. Richard Dawkins has had an interview cancelled in the United States because they looked back at his tweets and he'd said some very unkind things about Islam. I don't know why anybody would give a hoot about what... I can't imagine most Muslims care about what Richard Dawkins thinks of Islam. He's talking about the religion rather than the people that might practice it. Dawkins, of course, was part of a prominent group of atheists called the Four Horsemen. Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, who's an American philosopher and neuroscientist, Daniel Dennett as well, another American philosopher and cognitive scientist. Between them, this is kind of the areas that they talk in. And if you're going to have quality and intellectual discourse in areas such as this, it's going to involve some uncomfortable comments, statements, and elements and strands to that debate. They're atheists. Why would they care? That's their view. And why would, if you are a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, why would you care what they think? Don't go away, Tom, with you in a second. Abbas is in Redbridge. What's happening, Abbas?
Hi there, good evening, Ian.
Good evening to you.
I think there's a couple of points, really. Number one, I think we have to establish the fact that Professor Dawkins is an expert in evolutionary biology. He's not an expert on Islam. And, you know, your statement that he probably would qualify his arguments, well, I've heard many of his arguments. He doesn't qualify them. It's anecdotal, and it's based upon often statistics.
You don't think a biological evolutionist qualifies his arguments?
I believe that human beings generally have an expertise possibly in one or two subjects on which they can very easily qualify their arguments. But when you talk about things that are subjective to your understanding, when, for example, you're talking about, Arabic grammar and you're commenting on the Quran and what it says, when you don't even understand the Arabic and have to rely on a translation that might or might not be even correct, then it becomes a very, very weak and spurious argument.
Okay. Would you concede, though, Abbas, and I'm not going to argue, you're a Muslim, this is an area you clearly would know better than Dawkins in a personal journey's respect. I get all of that, but would you concede that in terms of non-Muslims, that Dawkins is probably going to be a little more geared up than most on his stats and facts, to put it in the colloquial?
Well, it would depend upon what non-Muslims you're talking about and how much research they've done. I think what's interesting at the moment, Ian, is that there are two types of people in psychology, the data-driven and the concept-driven. Most people are concept-driven, so they already have a predisposition to believe certain things, and confirmation bias basically just feeds those predispositions.
But they usually, a good scientist will build confirmation bias into their margin of error, of course.
Well, the issue here and the important fact here is that I've heard his arguments, and they are often misrepresentations, misinterpretations, mistranslations, and these are his views that he simply uses those particular translations that he's happy with, or views that he has heard from some Muslim somewhere, and accepts those as being somehow prominent and acceptable to all Muslims or Islam, when in fact they're not. And that's my point. He's a very clever man, very articulate, very controlled in his speech and everything else, and it comes across as very knowledgeable. I mean, your last caller, for example, who said, I've lived in Saudi Arabia and the Quran says to kill infidels. I can guarantee you 100% the Quran does not say you can go and kill infidels. In fact, the Quran says you can, and the Hadith, the Prophet, peace be upon him, categorically said that you can only fight those who fight you on the battlefield, and if they cease to fight you, then you must stop fighting them. And you cannot kill women, and you cannot kill children, and you cannot cut down trees, and you cannot kill animals, and you cannot pollute the air. I mean, come on.
I mean, I've heard, look, we'll always go round and round on this. I mean, I've heard Dawkins go equally nuts over Christians as well, for what it's worth, Abbas. He's clearly not that enamoured with any of the Abrahamic faiths or any other form of religion, for that matter.
Ian, I'll tell you where most of this rhetoric is coming from. It is coming from a fear that Islam is spreading, and it's spreading in the West faster than it's spreading anywhere else.
Well, he would say we should be fearful. He'd say we should be fearful.
Well, and that's the fear.
That's his view, isn't it? I couldn't have a qualified view like that because I don't, as you rightly say, have the level of scholarly research required to put that sort of view across.
Well, many think tanks and many estimates are saying that, Islam, and even in this country, for example, our country, the Gallup poll reported that more than 100,000 people accepted Islam between the year 2000 and 2011.
It's a very fast growing. I don't know why it's fast growing, because I don't know why any religion is fast growing.
The average age was 27. Yeah. The average education was postgraduate level. These are educated people.
Sure.
And are we saying? I believe in a very, very, a great saying that we have in this country, Ian. And it's the proof in the pudding is in the eating. These people, on average, studied comparative religion for 7 years. If this religion truly preached murdering innocent people, murdering non-believers, being unkind and unjust and unfair and throwing gays off roofs and things like that, if it truly preached that, are we honestly saying that these people are so stupid, so gullible, or have this violent streak in them that they found this teaching...
yes, because as a Muslim, Abbas, you're meant to keep quiet about that stuff when you talk to a mere mortal like me and not let it be known. The ISIS boys who are throwing gay people off buildings and drowning and setting fire to anything with a pulse, they are the real Muslims, of course.
Exactly.
You are just a wicked messenger who's keeping it all quiet and under wraps until the day of reckoning, or whatever the Islamic version of that is.
I mean, I would urge all of us, all of your listeners, to just sort of take a step back, from all this rhetoric, all this coverage that we see, and even if you look at hardened analytical and empirical evidence, at the biggest estimates that are given about extremism or extremists within Islam, it comes to a statistic of 0.005%. If you expand that to make it something far greater, then that is the definition of what a phobia is. It's an irrational fear in something that isn't actually there.
All right, listen, Abbas, great to debate this one with you. Thank you, sir.